Hello, welcome to Generation AI. Happy New Year's, everybody. This is the podcast where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I'm your host, Ardis Kadiu, and joined with me today is my insightful co-host, Dr. JC Bonilla. Hey, JC, Happy New Year.
Happy 2025, artists, friends, families, and anybody who is listening to our voices. Cold, fantastic start of January, but it's so cold here in New York, man. How's it going down south?
It's freezing here as well. We had a wonderful New Year's and Christmas here. The weather was beautiful. We were actually outside during New Year's, and it was in the 60s, so it's beautiful. And then, we're entering the winter now here. So, how's your New Year's? How's your holiday season?
It was fantastic. We started with a lot of the Ardis Kadiu family time. I really enjoyed spending a lot of time with you towards the end of basically in December. And then kind of like super social. As you know, we spent a lot of time together, work, things of that sort. And then also I just had this incredible family deep dive. As a Costa Rican, there's a contract that you have to spend Christmas and the holidays with your family. And I've been doing this for almost 20 years. So this is the first time in a very, very long time. To be honest, I cannot remember when it was the last time we did it. We stayed in the US, and gorgeous Colorado welcomed the Bonilla. So we did 2 days of Winter Wonderland, 2 days of kind of hiking in Colorado Springs, and 2 days of Denver urban chaos, which was fantastic. The kids loved the hotels, doing the hot tubs, just eating nonstop junk. My wife and I had a really good time. And yeah, it was a fantastic end of the year. And sometimes you just got to change it up. So I really appreciate it. And if you are listening from Colorado, you're definitely my favorite state in the country right now. How beautiful it is. How beautiful. I'm moving to Colorado. I'm sorry.
Come on, man. You're a New Yorker. I thought you were a New Yorker. North Carolina didn't do it for you, so now you're moving to Colorado.
Raleigh didn't do it for me. Sorry, artists. I know you've been the best.
Have you been to the mountains? Have you been to the mountains here?
No, you only take me to like cool bars and awesome restaurants in Raleigh. So take me to like the hiking shit, you know?
we gotta do the mountains one time.
By the way, cool. Where you live in Raleigh, it's fantastic. It's kind of like Colorado vibe. So just to tell you, you know, I do have a lot of respect for your neck of the woods. But yeah, great. And yeah, it feels like, you know, we're already halfway in the year. We had a very fun, busy start, you and I, right? So day 4th of January, we're recording. And what are we talking about today, Ardis?
Well, it's been, you know, when we stopped recording in December, it was towards the middle of December, and our last episode dropped, I believe, the 17th or something along those lines. Right. And during that time, it was in the middle of, there's been so many AI releases in December, both from and news, both from Google, from OpenAI, from a lot of different players. But today, and we want to start the year with a groupings of AI releases that they actually, you know, we thought it would be really, really good to talk about, which is the 12 days of Shipmas, which was the OpenAI dropped a new announcement or a new feature, multiple features, models, so on and so forth. So for 12 days in a row during December leading up to Christmas, they dropped a new announcement. And we're going to go over that today because a lot of it is very, very cool and very important, but also it impacts how we use ChatGPT with new features and so on and so forth. So what we've done today, or what we'll do today, is essentially go over and talk about the highlights, but we won't, you know, talk about them one by one. We will kind of try to group them into kind of 3 or 4 different categories. We'll talk about the first one around the model releases. We'll talk about second one around ChatGPT features and what they mean. And then after that, we'll talk about a little bit about development tooling and infrastructure, and then we'll end it with the integrations and kind of, you know, a few really cool things around integrations in there.
Love, 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 love. So, and then we add in the secret sauce, like it. I have a question for you on this before we hit it off. As product people, as technologists and leaders, What do you think of this strategy of packaging, labeling as 12 days, right? And it's a whole play on 12 days of Christmas. And this is huge. And as we unpack these huge releases, JC's perspective, it got watered down because end of the year, there's so much things going on. Exhibit A, here we are talking about it. What is it? Almost 15 to 20 days after the fact. So from a strategy of packaging end of the year doing 12, what do you think of this before we unpack what was it? The strategy and the branding and the actual release. Was it a good play or a bad play? I give it a B minus.
Well, to be honest, I think they weren't the only ones, and the releases. It's actually from where I sit, as a product and as a technology. I think it's a really good strategy to do that. One of the things that a lot of folks go into January is planning mode. So everybody goes into the new year in planning mode, and having this background and having these things that are out there, then you start incorporating them into your part of your planning. So I think it's a really good, even though people haven't digested that yet. From a digestion perspective, it's not quite there. Meaning, like there's a lot of folks who don't know anything about it, or maybe they're just reading up on it. But in the new year, things around predictions. So they needed to get into the predictions blog post. They needed to get into the the review blog post or retrospective blog posts and topics and news cycles. So I feel like that's a really good strategy.
Interesting.
So I would actually give it an A.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's huge and significant for all AI listeners or practitioners. And sure, it goes into planning mode. And again, my point is, as you all hear these friends, this is huge. And it feels like, oh my gosh, I missed that. It's because it happened during a significant period of signals, and there's a lot of noise that takes place within those signals. And here we are, giving it the significance and impact and the time it deserves. So, Ardis, walk us through this.
So again, these things dropped, every other day or every day.
We're not doing it sequential, right? We're not doing one.
We're not doing it
one,
sequential.
okay.
Yeah. So we're grouping them together, the things that are like, so we can make a little bit more sense of them, what was released. So the first one was, we're going to talk about new models. So there was three different, or there's multiple models that were released or announced. And the first one that was really exciting was the availability of the O1 model. So now the O1 model moved away from preview to becoming available for everybody as part of ChatGPT, and also available in the API as well. So this O1 model is now available in the API. So essentially, the O1 model was the reasoning model. We talked a lot about this before, where you can, it's designed to handle this complex task of breaking them down into smaller subtasks and then going through the internal reasoning or internal monologue in order to get to better answers. And we're seeing this be very useful for coding and for much more complex tasks. And throughout the year, and even going forward, we're going to be talking a lot about these reasoning models.
So reasoning goes mainstream. One of the things that we showcase in this, I think about 10 episodes ago, right? It's to start to democratize the aspect of how chain of thought becomes part of what we do in unpacking how the model basically connects the dots, right? That transparency is really, really important. And again, one of the things I love about this drop is that it brings the precursors of AI, machine learning, and data science out of that black box that has dominated data science, machine learning for the longest time to let me tell you how I went through it. And more importantly, I can come and interact with that black box. So that's fantastic. A lot of impact. I'm excited about how it brings the business case of user error and efficiency kind of increase. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. So then, as we move forward, this is O1 was the first day, and then the last day was actually the release of the O3 and O3 mini models. So O3, they skipped O2, but they
That's
because
exactly where my head went when I saw it. Like, what happened to O2?
yeah, they skipped it because of O2 as the telecom company in the UK, or they didn't want to get into a
Copyright infringement.
copyright infringement issue, things like that, trademark wars. So
Right,
so
right.
they went directly to O3. So O3, it's in preview. So just like they did with O1, they released it as a preview, and then a couple of months later they released it in the mainstream. O3 is the next generation model building on the O1 reasoning, right? And what's really cool about O3 is that the performance advancement in coding, science, this logic-based tasks, they're incredible. And essentially it kind of blew out of the water a lot of the benchmarks around, reasoning benchmark, or what we call like the AGI, some of the AGI benchmarks that are out there. O3 blew them out of the water, and it could reason a lot longer. It's a lot better at, understanding essentially these complex tasks and getting us closer to what we call AGI, so to speak, right?
In Ardis, one of the things that we start to see with this expansion of all three models and reasoning is that when we think about deployment of AI, there's tasks that are very transactional, right? Move this thing to left to right. And in a way, there's an opportunity where AI automates, but this is where first generation of automation, call it decision trees, heuristics, were pretty good. You need to move things from one to left, so you don't need this machinery. But the next generation of AI through agents and the aspect of, look, this is a complex task, and I need you to go through reasoning, human-like, and exposure. That's really where this is going. So what OpenAI in O3 starting to give us previews towards to is that this is becoming so mainstream, and what we should expect here is the same thing happened with the O1. It gets dropped, a few of us break it, use it, and then, I don't know, a few months later, it's going to be mainstream, and that capability of super reasoning now gets democratized. It really feels like that PhD level assistant and researcher hangs with you in your day-to-day, whether it's how do you cook a recipe, how do you do a workflow, how you start deploying complex layers. So fascinating benefit that we all get.
Correct. Yeah, and it's incredible in terms of the benchmarking and the what you call basically on the ARC AGI benchmarks, which with GPT-4 and some of the other models, we were at maybe like 1% or 3% on those tests, whereas O3 now gets in the 20s or 30% or even 40%. I forget exactly what the number is in the ARC AGIs, but so it becomes a lot closer to that AGI component that we're talking about. So then the third one in the model drops was the much anticipated, which this model was announced in February of 2024, which was Sora, the Sora video generation model, right? And this is the text to video generation tool. It's actually got introduced as a completely brand new website. So it's a separate it's not part of ChatGPT. So essentially, you have to go to a different website in order to work with it, which is Sora.com. I believe it's Sora.com. And this is we've talked about Sora, where it's the text to video generation. Surprisingly, this was, it just took so long for them to release this. And I got a chance to play around with it. It's impressive. I got the chance to play around from my phone in terms of the video generation. I haven't stressed it enough, and I haven't played with it enough to understand like what are some really good out. But there has been so many other video advancements from other companies like Google with VO2, which they just announced as well during the same time, the output seems to be so much better that Sora, even though it got introduced and it got released, it was a little bit underwhelming from an impact to what the industry thought, because we just got used to better and better video models over the year. So from February to now, we have so much more video generation and video models, but still Sora is one of the best ones out there, and it's now publicly available and you can have access to it as part of the ChatGPT modeling, so on Sora.com.
One of my hypotheses in Sora, because remember everybody, what Sora does here is it elevates these text-to-video capabilities that OpenAI has right now to DALL-E, and really makes them next level. And it brings the humanity, the aspect of the visuals, more realistic, to the point that the early demos that we saw blew out of the water the expectations of marketers, creative people, and whatnot. Having said that, this is where I see Sora trying to put a sore spot on the mid-journey benches, right? And it makes a lot of sense for me to see it outside the ChatGPT environment, because the nerdy aspect of ChatGPT as users, people like you and I use it, I just don't see it being as mainstream on the creative folk. In other words, you see the researcher, the strategist, like you and I working with a lot of ChatGPT, but the creative folk either defaulting to Midjourney or not using these tools at all. I think that Sora is going to be better at that. And from the user experience, as you land on Sora.com, you start seeing that right in front of you. So we'll see if I'm right. But I see here, based on capabilities, a play of I'm going for a slightly different audience artist.
Correct. Yeah. So this is now coming into the mainstream with all ChatGPT users can get access to Sora as well. So video generation becomes available.
In terms of accessibility, because I know you're going to talk also about memberships and GPT Pro, whatnot. If you have a current ChatGPT, I believe you get credits, like 50 videos,
Correct.
right? So you have, if you're paying for ChatGPT today, not the things that we're going to be talking about through the 12 days of drops, you get about 50 videos, and there is limitations in resolution and duration. So you can experiment, but there is an additional membership that is going to unpack the full benefit. So,
correct. Yeah, exactly. So you can still get used to it, and you don't have to sign up for another. The only thing is that while the announcements was happening in December, there was limited signups, so you had to be signing up with your ChatGPT account, and you had to wait a little bit because they just hadn't scaled out the servers yet. So now the capability or capacity should be there, so you can get access to it. You might be put into a wait list for a little bit.
By the way, Ardis, I had the opportunity, not using Sora, but DALL-E, to do all my Christmas cards for the family. It was super fun, and I really score big points with the ability to doing customized, like the little quirks of, like, you know, how I call my wife and my kids and things like that with the Christmas gifts. And it was the Christmas card, I'm sorry. So that was super fun. So next year is going to be Sora. We'll see where that takes us. Video
Cards.
Yeah, video cards.
Look at you, man. That's pretty cool. I like it. All right, so let's move on to kind of the second groupings, and this is all about ChatGPT features. So ChatGPT got a whole bunch of new features as part, and perhaps, well, you know, as we go through this, the first one that we're going to talk about is actually there's a new ChatGPT Pro subscription, right? So this ChatGPT Pro subscription essentially is $200 a month instead of $20 a month. And the reason for that is that you get unlimited usage of this O1 model with high priority server access. You get more credits in terms of Sora production. You also get, I'm assuming you're going to get access to a whole bunch of other components of O3 or earlier versions of O3. And the one thing that you also get, it's not just the O1, but you get the O1 Pro mode, which actually I tried it myself because I actually got the subscription. The O1 Pro mode is, it essentially thinks a lot longer. So you know how O1 thinks during, but
it's like
because it's on the $20 version.
The 2-3 second delay.
Exactly. Right? The O1 Pro mode thinks maybe a couple of minutes, or maybe it thinks even longer. And one of the tests that I did, this is today actually, or yesterday, was I uploaded a transcript, a customer discovery call transcript, as part of first test. So one of our account executives or one of our university partnership managers, had a call with a potential customer, and I uploaded that, and I just I asked it to go through it and pull out some of the themes of that conversation, and also try to think through what is the need here as described as part of the call, and what is the need behind the need, right? Just to understand how it's reasoning through that. It took about 5 minutes to give me an answer back, but it was actually very, very impressive in terms of what it came back with. And let me read that for you, because I feel like this is a really interesting one. The output was not very long, right? So the output was pretty short, but it essentially said, I see the big need behind the need here, connecting the dots across every student touchpoint in a single platform that blends automation with human interaction. Each of those VPs has a different corner of the institution's student experience puzzle. Marketing wants to reduce friction. Instruction and faculty wants to help students stay on track. So as you go through this, the last part they told me is that I plan to show them how Element solves that deeper cross-departmental challenge, one platform keeping everyone on the same page. And I took a step back, and I'm like, this is really interesting, because when we were thinking about how do we kind of go towards the demo and how do we think about that, it was all about AI first and how do we reduce complexity. But then as you take a step back and you're like, well, wait a minute, it makes a lot of sense now that in order to reduce complexity and make the student journey easier and reduce humans, you have to connect all the dots together. And by having different constituents in the demo, it makes sense to show that one unified thing makes that a lot easier. So I was really impressed with it. This is something that I'm going to try to play around with more going forward, but I don't want to spend any more time on it. So let's, I believe that if you're a coder, if you're producing code, the ChatGPT Pro subscription might help quite a bit. With the O1, reasoning, thinking longer can help you come up with more advanced kind of code or solutions that might be better. And if you have bigger problems to think through, again, it's something that might be definitely worth it for $200.
So my quick reactions on this is, everybody remember this. This is a $200 a month membership versus a $20 a month membership. That right. 10x will translate in a really important thing over the course of the year. The enterprise penetration of AI, definitely, it's highly unlikely that I'm going to get these $200 a month to, I don't know, look at recipes or do Christmas cards, right? But the applications of Ardis, as he just did, right? What is happening behind the scenes in this transcript? How do I get an engineer to basically unlock hours of work via an API and integration that is really kicking their butts? For 12, I mean, if you do this on an annualized base, we're talking about almost $2,500. So it must start, a year. Yeah. It must start replacing human output that today we have engineers or transcribers or really basically humans doing the work. So I'm excited to see how this unfolds and the perception that the 10x is actually valuable, and I'm translating to the business place. So be on the lookout. Good for you, OpenAI, to introduce a new standard of what monthly subscriptions should be. I'm excited to look at this.
Yeah, we'll see how the other folks are. So in terms of other features that were introduced, I believe we've seen Canvas, which is a new feature. So in order to use Canvas, you needed to open up a conversation in ChatGPT with Canvas, and then Canvas was essentially the editor on the right-hand side. And now Canvas is actually part of every conversation. So it's essentially a tool. So you can open up and you can tell ChatGPT to open up an output in Canvas. And that's part of the tool for any conversation now. And what it does is that Canvas is really this editable panel, and it's kind of, you're doing real-time editing between yourself and ChatGPT. So rather than copying and pasting your output to somewhere else and editing it, you can do that within, think about it as a Google Doc, as a live Google Doc in ChatGPT. And it's not just text that they introduced in there. They also added the ability to produce code and run that code in Canvas as well. So now you can ask ChatGPT to produce code for you, and that interpreter, that I believe it's a Python interpreter in there, that is running that code for you in Canvas as well. So you get all the error messages, which is incredible if you are playing around with scripts, or if you're doing data analysis, or you want something that is very useful, but you don't want to go set up something else to run it or to test it. This is something that's incredible, and the Canvas tool becomes a much more useful, not just for editing text, but also editing code and running that code as well.
Yeah. Ardis, would you mind doing the next one on projects? Because I like to in my reactions, I like to combine Canvas and projects, but would you mind telling people what projects are all about?
Yeah, so projects is another. So if you think about, in some cases, like I have conversations, and I start a new conversation every time. Let's say I want to reply to an email, right? And I need to take some of that email context, paste it in there, take maybe 2 or 3 other conversations, maybe take a document and say, reply to this email, or help me reply to this email, put my thoughts together, and here is, and then, here's some supporting material. Now, another email comes through, and then I have to do exactly the same thing, and I have to do exactly the same thing. So rather than, kind of keeping all these different conversations separately, they produced what's called projects. And think about them as like smart folders that are organizing these conversations and resources. So rather than you uploading and creating a new conversation every single time, you now create a folder, and then inside of that folder you have the ability to continue all these conversations, and you can also provide custom instructions to that folder. So think about this as a very lightweight GPT, right? A custom GPT, but it's actually organizing everything for you. So it's organizing the conversations. It's using those conversations for context, and it's also, you can give it custom instructions to say, okay, this is a folder for. You think about them as like long-term projects. If you're doing a project, for example, as well, you can. Of course, it's called projects, but that's the way that you think about it. It's like you keep adding things to it, and you keep the context of that, and you can always go back and now start new conversations around that particular project.
Yeah, one of the things that LLM models don't do well is replicability, right? Because the way they used predictions on context and whatnot, so oftentimes you generate the same prompt and you get outputs that look the same but are different, right? So one of the improvements through Canvases in projects is that you're able to start iterating Canvas on parts of an output, and you iterate at that local level. Call it a sentence or a part of an agenda or a piece of a function of code, right? I've been using Canvas that way, and it doesn't impact everything else. Why? Because prior to Canvas and prior to how this was working, it was a little clunky, that I would have to generate the entire code, and the pieces kind of change and whatnot. So it's a really good way for you to basically keep pieces intact. And now with the new deployment of Canvas, you're basically kind of streamline and make anything into that type of iterative work. With projects, the part that I see that is very similar is like, I did this last week, and then it remains in memory. So it's a really interesting deployment. I wonder how they're doing this, because what you are able to do is go back and add a piece to that project, that folder, right? Or, so one of the things that I'm using is I have this kind of folder of work that you and I did in early December with the leadership team, and I go back to and like add parts as opposed to generating a whole new thing. And it's really lovely to start looking at how projects now become more streamlined, and anything can be even the organization and the workspaces that are giving us fantastic. So super, super excited about Canvas and projects as it relates to project organization, right?
Yeah, I think projects is a really good one in terms of like asking questions. Like if you have a set of documents that you're working off and you're doing research, or you have some source documents that you want to go back and you want to do analysis on them, or you want to ask questions, you want to produce different things, like that's a good way of think about it, right? You're asking questions of this, and it replaces a whole use case that used to be where you uploaded your PDF and then you had a prompt, and now you had to, like, you can't really go back and say, oh, you need to start a new conversation because you have to upload that PDF again in order to ask questions out of that document. So now projects keep all those pieces together, the source and the context.
I mean, this type of improvements remind me a lot of how adoption, basically with small incremental innovation, kind of goes, bananas. And that's what we want as technologies. Remember when Gmail started to basically play around with sorting of unopened, or basically start senders and whatnot? Those small features made the Gmail experience so much better. And then people started migrating significantly from Hotmails and Yahoo accounts just because the dumbest simple thing of sorting, right? And yeah, it's good for you, OpenAI, to start thinking how organization it's important for us users. All right, we're halfway through the drops, I think. Where are we at in terms of drops?
We got to move pretty quick because we
All
have
right,
a lot more stuff.
let's do this
So
one fast.
so we had, I mean, we've talked about this one, but they actually announced that ChatGPT search, the search to ChatGPT search, is going to be available for all users. So this is the real-time internet search integration. It's not
Oh,
part of,
Perplexity, they going
yeah.
up for you.
I don't know. I'm still very favorable towards Perplexity, to be honest. I've been using both of them, and I still like Perplexity a lot better for the. Although I might have a new one in terms of it's a new tool that we'll talk about it another time from the Gemini side. But this is all about OpenAI. So search, it's not available for everybody. It's available for people that, if you don't, even if you don't pay for it, it's available. So everybody gets access to it. It's kind of that first step towards making this a Google competitor. So students, researchers, everybody gets access to it immediately. And you can use it for research. You can use it for a lot of different things, but you get access to it. All right. So moving on, on top of that, you also, what they announced is, 1-800 ChatGPT service and access to ChatGPT through other means. So you don't have to have an app, or you don't have to go to the website to get access. So somebody can actually call a number and get access to ChatGPT, which essentially it's pretty smart because it opens up the ChatGPT now to folks who are maybe a little bit older and they don't want to sign up for ChatGPT or go to the website directly. They can just call in and 1-800 ChatGPT as a service. So it's a voice-based ChatGPT via phone. And then the last one on this, on the features, so the 1-800 ChatGPT was not just the only one. They also have ChatGPT available via WhatsApp as well. So you can text the same number via WhatsApp, and you can get those responses. So it's now available on WhatsApp as well. And then the last one that I wanted to kind of highlight is the advanced voice mode now comes with video. So we remember when you were talking back and forth via real-time voice, now you have the ability for the ChatGPT to also have video as part of that feed. So what you can do now is you can actually have a video and you can show ChatGPT what you're looking at, and you can have a conversation about it. We've gone now multimodal input. So we have text, we have voice, and we have video as the inputs to kind of this advanced voice mode with video on the models. So we've opened those up on 4.0, which is the Omni, right? Again, the multimodal model now has all those inputs, and we have seen it on the outputs as well in terms of voice and text.
So let me react to these three drops of search, advanced voice, video, and the GPT service 800. By the way, they need a jingle for it, right? So that's a different conversation. So before December, if you're driving and let's say you're a car, Apple car, interface, you would come in, maybe get Siri to say, hey, where am I? And Siri would use location services to tell you you're in, I don't know, Colorado Springs. And they'll tell you the city, right? But then you would actually say, can you tell me where are the restaurants? Oh, I'm not allowed to search when you're driving. Or I found these search things and it will push you to, I don't know, the Safari or Chrome browser, and then you kind of have to look. So in a way, the interactability of it died. So now, if you're an Iron Man fan, we're in Jarvis mode, right? This is literally what happened and how these three things became a thing for me in the last week of the year. Hey, where am I? What? Tell me the history of Colorado Springs. We're at Garden of the Gods. What's the history? Who moved here? Like literally, I'm having a conversation, and it's becoming a real life tour where me, and my family are interacting with the voice, right? Took a snapshot of one of the mountains, recognizes it, and in a way, it allows me to basically go, by the way, probably not a safe thing to do right now. So we're not talking about car driving and safety, but this idea of having a full search and interactability while in situ, providing the context multimodal, blew my mind. And what I was really excited about is that the speed in the conversational aspect was so human-like, and it was a great way to adapt to AI in real world scenarios for me. In that case, happened to be being a tourist in Colorado Springs, Garden of the Gods. So didn't call. That's the only thing I needed to do the 800 ChatGPT service, but that's going to be my next experiment. By the way, Ardis, it picked up when I took a snapshot of this basically mountain. It not only picked up the mountain, but it picked up the context of the prior conversation with Kitty voices, and it gave us the track that was Kitty friendly. So it was so smart that the memory updated to tell us this is how you should walk it, so that if you don't compete with adult versus kid or toddler. So it was that smart.
And just to add one more in there, one of the things that's obviously not relevant anymore, but as part of those real-time voices, they introduced a Santa voice, which came in really, really handy during Christmas time as we were going back and forth with obviously my kids and having some conversations in the car with Santa and a bunch of other kids as well, having real-time conversations. And when it says, it's like, hey, I'm here with Noah, or hey, I'm here with X kid, it's like they want to say hi, and then it just goes ahead and has that conversation. That was pretty nice. So they introduced that as well as part of the Christmas.
Super fun.
You didn't try that? Yeah.
No.
It should have been. I don't know if it would have talked in a different language. I think it did. I think it did talk in a different language for me, Santa, which was pretty cool.
That'll be a good one.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on.
Yeah, move on.
So segment 3. So we're kind of, this grouping is a little bit more techie or developer tooling and infrastructure, but obviously this is very important for Element and like our developers. So we had a whole bunch of things. The real-time voice got an update, so we got a whole lot of stuff around real-time voice. The all-one model and the API, and there was a bunch of API updates as well. So there was real-time updates with the real-time voice. There was enhanced integration capabilities. The all-one model became available in the API, so now we can use that reasoning engine, which becomes really interesting as we start building at Element. As we kind of finish up our reasoning engine for proactive agents, and we come to market with that. They introduced a whole bunch of things like SDKs to make it available for different languages. They also introduced a really cool feature, which is this reinforcement fine-tuning, which is expansion. So essentially, in preference fine-tuning, they called it preference fine-tuning, which was interesting because in the past, it was really hard to have these models kind of adhere to a specific style of how you want certain outputs, but now you can give it examples, and that fine-tuning it kind of picks up the style of I want it longer or shorter based on the output that you give it based on that. So it picks up the style. So that's really interesting for us because we can now incorporate it as part of our products. And when it's domain specific things that, hey, we want to talk to students this way, or hey, we want to talk to current students versus prospective students versus other constituents a different way, we can kind of load in examples of those different outputs, and then it will kind of fine tune that model towards that preference, fine tuning. So which is pretty cool. So we got a whole lot of stuff around the APIs and around our developer tooling, which we're really excited in here at Element, and we're already starting to think about and implementing some of that stuff already.
10 seconds of comments. Reinforced learning, remember everybody, it comes from this technique of introducing rewards or penalties, punishment, and that allows the user to come and basically tune it against really niche applications. So a great way for AI deployment to go niche. And of course, developers, your toolbox just got so much better after Christmas, and the things that we are doing via the UI, now it's basically opened up and it can be introduced in any proprietary technology. So super exciting.
Yeah, that was really cool. One example that I can give you is for like, we haven't been able with prompt engineering to come to a really good outcome around answers on, let's say, text messaging versus an email versus a chat, right? So the different kind of outputs for those are different. And like in a text message, you answer things differently, very short. Sometimes you use emojis when you can, and you also kind of shorten things around. So how do you put in a prompt that can actually encompass all of those things? Well, now we can actually build this kind of fine tuning for preference fine tuning, that we can kind of build that output fine tuning for those different channels, and then we can take a message and make it available for each one of those. Not just that, but also for how you talk to a Gen Z language versus how you talk to somebody who's a little bit more, more seasoned. Even though you could prompt some of that before, prompting wasn't a very good, it just worked maybe 80% of the time. But now this gets us to where we want. All right, so let's move on. The last one, the integrations. This one was an interesting one, right?
Come on, it was so exciting. Apple integration. Come on, get excited. You never give credit, to these like small ecosystem things, my friend. So sorry, I interrupt you, but
No. The ecosystem was interesting. Well, I'm a little bit biased, or a little bit kind of disenchanted with Apple Intelligence, right? So now ChatGPT integrates directly with Apple Intelligence. So ChatGPT is embedded into the Apple ecosystem. What that means is it enhances Siri with advanced AI functionality. Siri hands things off to ChatGPT when it doesn't know or when it needs to, or you can have that as a default. ChatGPT now is an option. It can integrate with Apple Notes, Notion, other kind of tools in your phone, and it really kind of can be. It's integrated natively into the Apple Intelligence hooks and ecosystem. So now this is the first time that they did that. Even though they had talked about Apple Intelligence, had talked about that before, but now we actually seeing it as part of the product. So to be honest, I haven't used it a lot in there because I use the apps standalone. But have you had any good experience with that, JC? Have you used it yet?
No, I mean, I've when I had to, I think some of the regulations of Siri governed by the car turn on. So I had to default to, use it in the app. So I haven't seen the benefit of it. But look, my applaud here is, if you think about Microsoft and Copilot, right? So at the end of the day is OpenAI infrastructure doing its magic. So what is starting to happen here is that ecosystem play that, call it Siri, or whatever brand we're going to have behind the scenes, the brains, the smarts, it's these, OpenAI family just broadening its reach. So, hey, what does that mean? Siri just got smarter and better. Just hope that Apple is able to benefit from it. And as users, we're going to start to make decisions of, do I want to interact with it via Siri, via Copilot, via Notion, but it seems that all the roads lead to OpenAI. You like that? You like that? All the roads lead to OpenAI. For now.
Yeah, that was it. That was a good one. I feel like we kind of try to minimize or try to digest and try to compress everything that was announced and put it into perspective during those 12 days. It was very exciting. There was a lot of articles written about it. And hopefully this gives you an opportunity to go ahead and try some of these features out and see how they can impact your day-to-day. Over the next few episodes, and this year, we're going to be very intentional in how we're thinking about generation AI and the kind of things that we're bringing in here. So we're going to be more intentional about doing more practical episodes, doing more content around video or real time or kind of live episodes that we publish directly on LinkedIn and YouTube and so on and so forth. We have our AI Engage Summit coming up at the end of February. So that's 2 days, 2 days kind of packed with 4 to 5 hours a day worth of content around different tooling, different techniques, different kind of what's coming up. We're going to have conversations with university leaders. We're going to have conversations with students and so on and so forth. So it's going to be a really exciting year for us. And we're starting now. And it's all about adoption. It's all about how do we get you the right toolkits? How do we get you in the right mindset? And how do we bring you the fast moving real world use cases that you can kind of take back and use. And of course, we're going to talk a lot about kind of the what's coming and bigger picture things. But at the end of the day, we're also going to try to make it much more practical so you can kind of take away a lot of those. JC, any last words before we kind of end up? This is our first episode of the year. This is going to be an amazing year for us. We are looking forward to it. But how about you?
As we predicted in 2024, 2025, it's a year where AI goes mainstream. So we got our work cut out for ourselves. And we are raising our hands, friends, to tell you we will bring that information to you. We will translate it, serve it in a consumable way with our style. And our promise is, as nerds who work, how do we translate this to make it interesting, business application, pragmatic on our lives? And we're here for it. So please always let us know how we can make this content more relatable. But there's so much exciting things coming your way. So stay tuned and participate.
Till next time, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.